the Interstellar Academy floated in silent orbit above a blue-white gas giant, its massive rings visible through the wide crystal windows. Students from hundreds of worlds arrived every cycle, carrying with them pride, fear, ambition, and long histories that shaped how they judged one another. The Academy was meant to train future leaders, diplomats, and defenders of the galaxy. But from the first moment, it became clear that equality was only a word, not a reality. Status ruled everything. Species with ancient empires walked the halls with confidence. Those with powerful abilities or advanced technology claimed the best seats, the strongest teams, and the most attention from instructors. Newer civilizations learned quickly to stay quiet, observe, and survive. Among the arrivals that day was an alien princess. From a distant star system few truly understood. Her species was known in records, but rarely seen. Long ago, her people had stood among the strongest powers in the galaxy. Then, something had gone wrong. Treaties collapsed, borders closed, and her empire withdrew from most interstellar affairs. Since then, rumors replaced facts. Some said her people were dangerous. Others whispered that they were broken, hiding weakness behind pride. No one seemed to know the truth, but fear filled the gaps. She walked through the academy gates alone. Her appearance drew attention despite her effort to remain unnoticed. She was young, tall compared to most species, with calm movements shaped by royal training. Her expression was controlled, but her eyes carried quiet caution. She had learned long ago that showing emotion invited judgment. As she entered the main hall, voices softened. Conversations paused for just a second longer than normal. A few students shifted their stance, creating subtle distance. No one spoke openly, but the message was clear. She was not welcome. The princess ignored the reactions and followed the floor markings toward the central assembly chamber. Inside, rows of seats curved around a raised platform where instructors would soon stand. Students filled the space quickly, grouping themselves by species, alliance, or shared history. She scanned the room, searching for an assigned place. Her name appeared on a small light panel near the center row. It was not a place of honor, but not a low rank either. She moved toward it and sat down. The seats beside her remained empty. At first, she assumed others were simply slow to arrive. But as minutes passed, students filled seats all around, stopping one space away from her. Some pretended not to notice the empty spot. Others glanced at it and chose a different row. She kept her posture straight, hands resting calmly in her lap. Years of training taught her how to endure moments like this without reaction. Still, the silence pressed heavily. This was not the first time. She remembered earlier diplomatic events where her presence had cleared rooms. She remembered polite smiles followed by quiet exclusion. Each time she told herself it did not matter. She was here for her people, not for comfort. But knowing that did not make it easier. At the back of the chamber, a human student entered late. Humans were still unusual sights in places like this. Their civilization was young by galactic standards, barely stepping into wider politics. Some species viewed them with curiosity, others with mild interest, but few considered them important. The human paused at the entrance, taking in the room. His eyes moved across the rows, reading expressions, noticing patterns. Humans were good at that. Survival on a dangerous homeworld had trained them to observe before acting. That was when he noticed the empty seat. He followed the line of avoidance back to its center and saw the princess sitting alone. He did not know her history in detail. He did not know the rumors. What he saw was someone being quietly pushed aside, without a word spoken. It felt familiar. Humans had experienced similar treatment during early contact years, not through fear of power, but through doubt of worth. Being ignored could hurt just as much as open hostility. The instructor's voice echoed through the hall. "All students take your assigned seats. Assembly will begin." The human glanced at his own panel. His assigned seat was several rows away, among a mixed group of minor species. No one there looked especially friendly or unfriendly. It would have been easy to follow instructions and blend in. Instead, he made a different choice. He walked forward. Each step echoed louder than expected, or maybe it only felt that way. A few students noticed his movement and turned their heads. When they realized where he was going, whispers spread like a quiet ripple. The princess noticed him only when he reached the empty space beside her. She looked up, surprised but careful. Many before him had approached, only to stop short and turn away. He did not stop. He sat down. For a moment the chamber felt frozen. No alarms sounded, no guards rushed in, nothing dramatic happened. Yet the tension was real, hanging heavy in the air. The human adjusted his seat and offered a polite nod. "Hello," he said simply. The princess hesitated, then inclined her head slightly. "Greetings," she replied. Her voice was calm, controlled, but there was a faint trace of surprise. They sat quietly as the instructor began speaking. The lesson was an introduction to academy protocols, rules, and expectations, but attention in the room was divided. Many students watched the pair instead of the platform. Some felt confusion. Others felt irritation. A few felt concern. Why would a human risk association with her? The princess focused on the lecture, but she was aware of every glance. Sitting beside someone should not have mattered, yet it changed everything. For the first time since arriving, she did not feel entirely alone. When the instructor dismissed the assembly, students stood and began leaving in clusters. Conversations erupted again, louder now. The human remained seated for a moment, gathering his things. The princess did the same. When they stood, she spoke quietly. "You did not have to do that," she said. He met her gaze. "I know." She studied him, searching for mockery or hidden motive. She found none. "Most choose not to sit near me." "I noticed," he replied. "That choice can bring trouble," she warned. He shrugged lightly. "I've dealt with trouble before." They exited the chamber together, walking at a comfortable distance. Others moved around them, some watching openly now. The social barrier had shifted, even if only slightly. As they reached the main corridor, the princess paused. "You should know who I am," she said. "Association with me may affect how others see you." "I know who you are," the human said honestly. "At least I know what people say, and that does not concern you." "It does," he admitted, "but not enough to move seats." She seemed taken aback by his directness. Many spoke carefully around her, choosing words that hid meaning. This human did not. "My name is Lyra," she said after a moment. "I'm Daniel," he replied. They walked in silence for a few steps. Then she asked, "Why?" He did not answer immediately. Humans often needed time to find the right words, even in simple English. "Where I come from," he said slowly, "we learned that letting someone stand alone is sometimes worse than pushing them away. I didn't think that was right." She absorbed this quietly. "My people once believed the galaxy would stand with us forever," she said. "We were wrong." "Humans are wrong a lot," Daniel said. "We just keep going." A faint smile touched her expression, quickly controlled, but real. They reached a junction where paths split toward different residential sectors. Lyra stopped. "This is where I turn," she said. Daniel nodded. "Same time tomorrow?" She hesitated, then nodded once. As they parted ways, unseen eyes followed them. Somewhere in the upper levels, instructors reviewed live feeds. In diplomatic offices light years away, automated systems flagged unusual social data. A human had chosen to sit beside an alien princess no one else would approach. It was a small act, but in a galaxy shaped by symbols, it was the beginning of something far larger. The next morning at the academy began earlier than most students expected. Lights brightened gradually across the living quarters, and a calm voice echoed through the halls announcing the start of training cycles. Daniel woke quickly, still adjusting to the structured rhythm of academy life. Unlike many species who relied on advanced technology to assist their routines, humans often depended on simple habits and mental preparation. He dressed in the academy uniform and paused for a moment, thinking about the previous day. Sitting beside Lyra had felt like a small decision at the time, but the reaction from others told him it was far more significant. He did not regret it. If anything, he felt curious about what would happen next. Outside, the corridors were already full of movement. Groups of students walked together, discussing strategies, abilities, and expectations for their first training exercises. Some conversations quieted when Daniel passed by. He noticed the looks, but ignored them. Humans had learned long ago that overthinking every stare only slowed progress. The first training session took place in a massive simulation hall. The room was circular, surrounded by transparent panels showing shifting landscapes from different worlds. Instructors floated above on observation platforms, watching closely. Lyra arrived shortly after Daniel. She walked with calm confidence, though her eyes scanned the room carefully. Today felt different from the assembly. Yesterday had been observation. Today would be judgment. Students were assigned into groups for tactical exercises. Panels lit up, displaying team compositions. As names appeared, many students quickly gathered with their assigned partners. When Lyra's name appeared, a small silence followed. Her assigned team members hesitated. One of them glanced at her, then at the instructor, then back at their own species companions. Without saying anything openly disrespectful, they moved toward another group, pretending confusion. The system recalculated, trying to fill the gap. Daniel watched the exchange and felt irritation rise, though he kept his expression calm. The instructor observed but did not intervene. Perhaps this was part of the test, seeing how students reacted without guidance. Lyra stood still, face composed, as if she expected nothing else. Years of experience had taught her to accept such moments without visible reaction. The panel flashed again. Daniel's name appeared beside hers. He walked over without hesitation. "You do not need to volunteer," she said quietly. "It says we're a team," he replied, tapping the glowing panel. "Looks official to me." For a brief moment, her posture softened. Very well. The environment shifted around them, transforming the hall into a rugged terrain filled with cliffs and uneven ground. A digital sky stretched above, realistic enough to trick the senses. The objective appeared on their wrist displays: reach a marked extraction point while overcoming environmental challenges and limited resources. Many teams rushed forward immediately, relying on speed or raw strength. Daniel paused, observing the terrain. "What do you see?" Lyra asked. "Too obvious," he said. "If everyone runs straight, they'll run into problems." She studied the map and nodded slowly. A predictable path invites traps. Together, they chose a slower route along higher ground. It required more effort, but offered better visibility. As they moved, Lyra demonstrated strategic planning, predicting where obstacles might appear. Daniel contributed with practical improvisation, using available materials to create tools or shortcuts. Their partnership felt natural, despite coming from completely different cultures. Other teams struggled. Some fell into simulated hazards or ran out of energy quickly. A few glanced toward Daniel and Lyra with surprise as they advanced steadily. At one point, a sudden landslide simulation triggered ahead of them. Daniel reacted quickly, pulling Lyra away from falling debris. She recovered instantly, analyzing the situation and guiding them toward a safer path. "You trust quickly," she observed as they continued. "Humans learn fast when they don't, he said. She considered this. Trust had never come easily to her. Royal life required caution, and betrayal was always a possibility. Yet Daniel's actions felt genuine. As they reached a checkpoint, they encountered another team struggling with damaged equipment. The students hesitated when they saw Lyra approaching, uncertainty clear on their faces. Daniel stopped. "We help?" he asked her. She hesitated only briefly. "Yes." Together they repaired the equipment, using creative solutions. The other team watched closely, surprised by both the humans' resourcefulness and the princess's willingness to assist without expecting advantage. By the time the simulation ended, Daniel and Lyra ranked among the highest performers. When the environment faded and the hall returned to normal, murmurs spread through the crowd. Some students appeared impressed, others looked uncomfortable, as if the outcome challenged their expectations. An instructor approached them, tall and calm, with a voice that carried authority without harshness. "Effective cooperation," the instructor said. "You demonstrate complementary strengths." Lyra inclined her head respectfully. Daniel simply nodded. As they left the hall, whispers followed them again, but the tone had changed slightly. Curiosity replaced some of the earlier avoidance. Outside, Lyra stopped near a window overlooking the stars. "You altered the outcome today," she said. "We both did," Daniel replied. She looked at him carefully. "You do not seem concerned about reputation." "I care about actions more," he said. "Reputation changes." She seemed thoughtful. "My people once believed reputation was everything. When it fell, so did trust." He leaned against the wall beside her. "Humans messed up a lot, too. Wars, mistakes, bad decisions. But we kept trying again." She studied his words, as if weighing them against her own experiences. Later that day, rumors began spreading more quickly across the academy networks. Some students claimed Lyra had hidden abilities. Others said the human must possess unknown strengths. A few suggested the partnership was politically motivated. None of them understood the simple truth. Two individuals had chosen cooperation over avoidance. In the dining hall that evening, seating patterns shifted slightly. A few students sat closer than before, though still cautious. One alien approached briefly, asking about their strategy during the simulation. Lyra answered politely, surprised by the respectful tone. Daniel noticed her growing confidence. The constant isolation she had endured seemed to weaken just a little. However, not everyone welcomed the change. Across the room, a small group watched them carefully, expressions calculating. They had expected the princess to fail, to confirm the rumors surrounding her species. Instead, she had succeeded, and success challenged hierarchy. As the days continued, training sessions grew more complex. Daniel and Lyra adapted quickly, balancing each other's strengths. She taught him diplomatic awareness, how small gestures could influence perception. He showed her how flexibility and humor could ease tension. Slowly, the gap between them and others narrowed. One afternoon, while reviewing mission data, Lyra spoke quietly. "There is something you should know. My presence here is not simply academic," she said. "I represent my people. Every action is observed by those who judge whether we deserve a place among others again." "That sounds like a lot of pressure," he said. "It is," she admitted. "And failure would confirm what many already believe." He considered this, then said gently, "Then we just keep succeeding." She almost laughed at the simplicity of the statement, but instead nodded. As they left the training hall that day, an announcement echoed through the academy. All students were to prepare for a major evaluation, a survival test that would determine future leadership tracks. Excitement and tension spread instantly. Lyra felt a familiar weight settle on her shoulders. The test would be more than training. It would be a public stage. Daniel glanced at her and smiled slightly. Looks like the real challenge starts now. She met his gaze, and for the first time since arriving at the academy, she did not feel alone facing it. The announcement of the survival evaluation changed the atmosphere across the academy immediately. Conversations became more serious, and alliances that once felt casual suddenly carried new weight. Students understood that this test was not just another exercise. It would determine reputations, leadership paths, and future opportunities within the galactic system. Daniel and Lyra stood among a large crowd gathered in the main briefing chamber. A massive projection displayed a rotating planet, surrounded by data lines and environmental readings. The instructors explained that teams would be deployed onto this world in controlled zones. The environment would simulate real dangers, forcing students to adapt, cooperate, and survive. The goal was simple: reach the extraction point within a limited time while maintaining team integrity. Many students looked excited, others looked nervous. Some studied their potential rivals with calculating eyes. Lyra listened carefully, her expression calm but focused. Royal training had prepared her for pressure, but this felt different. Here, her performance would not only reflect on her personally, but on her entire civilization. Daniel stood beside her, arms crossed, observing reactions rather than just listening to instructions. Humans often focused on people as much as situations. He noticed the group across the room that had been watching them for days. Their attention was sharp, their expressions serious. "They're planning something," he murmured quietly. Lyra followed his gaze. "Yes," she said softly. "Some believe success must follow established order. When that order changes, they resist." "Then we stay ready," he said. Teams were assigned shortly after the briefing. This time, the academy system placed Daniel and Lyra together intentionally, along with several other students from different species. The mix felt unusual: a strong warrior from a desert world, a highly intelligent aquatic species using a mobility suit, and a quiet engineer known for technical expertise. At first, the team's reactions were cautious. Some still carried doubts about Lyra, while others were unsure about trusting a human. But the upcoming challenge left little room for hesitation. The deployment began at dawn. Transport ships carried teams down toward the surface of the evaluation world. Through the window, vast landscapes stretched endlessly. Mountains, forests, deep valleys, and unpredictable weather systems. When they landed, the air felt heavy but breathable. The environment simulation activated immediately, creating realistic conditions that tested endurance and decision-making. The team gathered quickly, reviewing their map. The extraction point lay far beyond a series of difficult terrain zones. "Straight path is fastest," the warrior suggested. "Fastest is not always safest," Lyra replied calmly. "Others will choose that route." Daniel nodded. "And if everyone moves the same way, problems stack up." After a brief discussion, they agreed to follow a less obvious route, along elevated terrain. The decision required trust, and the fact that the team listened to Lyra marked a small but important shift. As they moved forward, the environment tested them constantly. Strong winds slowed their progress. Sudden temperature changes forced them to adapt clothing and energy usage. The engineer worked carefully to manage resources while the aquatic member analyzed environmental patterns. Daniel noticed something important. Whenever tension rose, Lyra spoke with calm authority, offering clear direction without demanding control. Her leadership style felt natural, guiding rather than forcing. Midway through the first phase, they encountered another team struggling with damaged equipment. Some members suggested ignoring them to save time, but Daniel looked at Lyra. She hesitated only briefly. "We help," she decided. Working together, they stabilized the damaged gear. The rescued team expressed gratitude, but also surprise. Rumors about Lyra had painted her as distant or cold, yet her actions showed empathy. As they continued, clouds gathered overhead, dark and heavy. The simulation triggered a massive storm. Winds howled across the landscape, reducing visibility. and making communication difficult. Several teams panicked, rushing toward shelter without coordination. Daniel raised his voice over the noise. "We need higher ground, but protected from direct wind." Lyra quickly scanned the terrain and pointed toward a natural rock formation that could provide cover. The team followed her guidance, moving carefully to avoid slipping. Inside the sheltered area, they waited out the worst of the storm. During the pause, the warrior finally spoke openly. "You lead well," he said to Lyra. "Better than rumors suggest." She gave a small nod. Rumors rarely tell truth. Daniel smiled slightly at that. When the storm passed, the landscape had changed. Paths once visible were now blocked. The map recalculated new hazards, forcing them to rethink their route. This was where Daniel's adaptability became clear. He suggested using fallen debris to create a bridge across a damaged area rather than walking around it. The idea saved time and energy, impressing the team. However, as they approached the next zone, signs of interference appeared. Another group had altered the terrain slightly, creating obstacles that slowed progress.
"They're trying to isolate us," Daniel said quietly.
Lyra's eyes narrowed slightly. They want failure to appear natural. Instead of confronting them directly, she chose a different strategy. She led the team along a path that seemed slower, but allowed them to avoid the trap entirely. Hours passed. Exhaustion grew, but teamwork strengthened. Then a crisis struck. A simulated seismic event shook the ground, causing a deep fracture to open beneath part of their path. One team member slipped, nearly falling into the gap. Daniel reacted instantly, grabbing their arm and pulling them back with effort. The moment revealed something important. He did not hesitate, even when helping someone who had doubted him earlier. The rescued teammate looked at him with newfound respect. As they approached the final stage, communication systems briefly returned online. Messages from instructors confirmed that performance was being evaluated not just on success, but on cooperation, decision-making, and leadership under pressure. Lyra felt the weight of those words. Every action mattered. Near the extraction zone, multiple teams arrived at once, creating tension. Some competed aggressively for position, while others waited carefully. Daniel suggested something unexpected. "We coordinate instead of compete." Several students resisted at first, but Lyra stepped forward and spoke clearly, proposing a shared plan that allowed everyone to reach extraction safely without conflict. Her diplomatic skill surprised many. She did not demand authority. She offered solutions that benefited all. Slowly, agreement formed. When the extraction signal activated, multiple teams boarded successfully, including theirs. The mission ended not with rivalry, but with cooperation. Back aboard the Academy ship, exhaustion mixed with relief, students talked openly about the experience, sharing stories of challenges and unexpected alliances. Observers watched closely. Reports began forming about the humans' quick thinking and the princess's leadership. Perceptions shifted again. Later, as Daniel and Lyra stood together near a viewing window, she spoke quietly. "The day changed something." "Yeah," he said. "People saw who you really are. And who humanity is," she added thoughtfully. He shrugged lightly. "We just try things until they work." She smiled faintly, no longer hiding it completely. Behind them, instructors discussed the results. The survival test had revealed more than skill. It showed potential leaders capable of changing old patterns, and the simple decision made on the first day, a human sitting beside a princess no one would approach, continued to reshape the path ahead. The return to the academy after the survival evaluation felt different from anything the students had experienced before. Conversations filled every corridor, and the usual invisible barriers between species had softened. Students who once avoided each other now exchanged stories about storms, difficult terrain, and unexpected teamwork. The test had changed more than rankings. It had changed perspectives. Daniel walked beside Lyra through the main hallway. For the first time since her arrival, Students greeted her openly. Some nodded respectfully. Others asked questions about strategy or leadership during the mission. The quiet isolation that had surrounded her earlier was slowly fading. She noticed it, but tried not to show how much it meant to her. Years of controlled behavior made sudden change feel almost unreal. "Things feel different," Daniel said, glancing around. "Yes," she replied softly. "People no longer see only rumors. They saw actions." He smiled slightly. Actions speak loud. They entered the central briefing chamber where all participants gathered to hear the results. The instructors stood on the platform, calm and serious, while large screens displayed performance data. The lead instructor began speaking. The survival evaluation was designed to test not only skill but character. Leadership is not measured by strength alone. Cooperation, adaptability, and empathy shape the future of the galaxy. Several names appeared on the screen, highlighting students who demonstrated exceptional qualities. Among them were Daniel and Lyra. A murmur moved through the crowd. Recognition from the academy carried weight, and many students looked toward them with new respect. The instructor continued. Some students challenged expectations. Some changed outcomes through cooperation rather than competition. These actions reflect the qualities needed for future leaders. Lyra listened carefully, her posture straight. She had attended many ceremonies before, but this moment felt personal. For the first time in a long while, recognition came not from royal status, but from earned respect. After the assembly ended, students gathered in small groups discussing results. A few approached Daniel and Lyra, asking for advice or sharing gratitude for help during the mission. One student said to Lyra, "I misjudged you before. I apologize." She nodded calmly. Understanding grows through experience. Daniel noticed how natural her responses felt now. The quiet tension that once surrounded her had eased. Later that day, they sat near a large observation window, overlooking the stars. Ships moved slowly across the distance, their lights like tiny sparks against the darkness. "You changed their view?" Daniel said. "We changed it," she corrected gently. He shrugged. "Maybe, but you did most of the leading." She shook her head slightly. "Leadership requires support. Alone, I would have struggled. Your presence allowed others to reconsider their assumptions." He leaned back, thinking. Humans are good at stepping into awkward spaces, maybe because we've been there before. She looked at him curiously. "You speak often about humanity's past struggles, because we learned from them," he said simply. "We don't always get things right, but we try again." That philosophy felt powerful. Not perfection, but persistence. Days passed and training sessions resumed with new intensity. Mixed-species teams became more common as students realized cooperation brought better results. Daniel and Lyra continued working together, though they also encouraged others to form new alliances. One afternoon, a special diplomatic simulation began. Students were required to negotiate solutions between rival factions. Lyra took a central role, guiding discussion calmly, while Daniel supported with practical suggestions that balanced emotional tension. Observers noted how their approaches complemented each other perfectly. Lyra offered structure and vision. Daniel provided flexibility and creativity. After the session, an instructor approached them privately. "Your partnership demonstrates something rare," the instructor said. "Different cultures learning from each other without losing identity." Lyra inclined her head respectfully. Daniel nodded, unsure what to say but feeling proud. News of their success spread beyond the academy. Reports reached diplomatic networks and political leaders across different star systems. The idea that a human and a once isolated princess could inspire cooperation attracted attention. Some leaders saw hope in it. Others watched cautiously, unsure if the change would last. One evening, Lyra received a secure message from her homeworld. She read it silently, emotions carefully controlled. When she finished, she turned to Daniel. "My people observed the evaluation," she said quietly. "They express pride." He smiled warmly. "That's good, right?" "Yes," she replied, voice softer than usual. "Da." For many cycles we believed the galaxy had turned away completely. Now they see possibility. They walked slowly along the Academy Gardens, a rare place filled with plants from many worlds. Lights reflected gently off leaves and water features, creating a peaceful atmosphere.
"I used to believe my role here was only symbolic," she said.
"Now I understand it is more." "What do you think it is?" he asked. She paused, searching for words. "To show that isolation does not define us, that we can change." That sounds like a human story, too. They laughed quietly together. As the training cycle approached its end, the Academy organized a final gathering. Students from all species stood together in the main hall, where the journey had begun. This time, seating arrangements felt different. Groups mixed freely, and the empty space that once existed beside Lyra was gone. During the ceremony, selected students were invited to share reflections. When Lyra's name was called, she stepped forward calmly. The room grew quiet. She spoke with steady confidence. "When I first arrived, I believed I would stand alone. I expected judgment and distance. I accepted it because I thought it unavoidable. Yet, one simple action changed everything." Her eyes moved briefly toward Daniel. "A person chose to sit beside me without fear. That moment showed me that strength is not only power or status. It is the courage to treat others as equals." The room listened carefully. Through cooperation, we learned that differences are not barriers but opportunities. Leadership means creating space where all voices matter. She stepped back, applause filling the hall. Daniel felt slightly uncomfortable with the attention, but also deeply proud. After the ceremony, students gathered for one last evening before new assignments would begin. Conversations felt warmer, friendships stronger. The academy itself seemed changed, as if invisible walls had fallen. Standing near the observation window once again, Daniel and Lyra watched ships departing for distant missions. "What happens next?" he asked. She considered the question. "We continue forward, together and separately, but always connected by what we learned here." He nodded. "Sounds like a good plan." She turned toward him, expression sincere. "Thank you." "For what?" "For sitting beside me," she said simply. He smiled. "It was just a seat." She shook her head gently. "No, it was the beginning." Outside the window, stars stretched endlessly, each one representing new journeys, new alliances, and new stories waiting to unfold. Humanity's quiet strength, the willingness to reach out without fear, had changed more than one life. It had begun to reshape how the galaxy understood connection itself. And as they stood together, no longer defined by isolation or doubt, the future felt wide and open, filled with possibilities born from a single simple choice.